Well, if you've just been dying to plant your warm season vegetables, you'll be happy to know that it's time to start planting right now, especially things like tomatoes. Also, peppers and eggplant are some transplants that you can start setting out in the garden. Now, if you live in the south part of the state, around April 15th is a good time to set those out. However, if you live in the north to northwest part of the state, you're going to want to wait until the end of April or maybe even the 1st of May, because we're not totally out of the danger of frost yet, and these are all very sensitive plants to frost. Now, some of the seeds that you can be putting in, you can get your corn in now if you haven't already, and also cucumbers, beans, okra, and summer squash can be planted. Now, something to think about there is that you want the soil temperature at the depth that you're planting the seeds to be 50 degrees Fahrenheit. So think about what the weather's been like and then gauge from there. Now, if you want to wait to plant these again until around the 1st of May, that's great. Now, there are some of the plants that you really do need to wait, and that would be the winter squash, watermelon, cantaloupe, and your sweet potatoes. You'll want to wait until it really warms up because those need warmer soil. Now, tomatoes like a warm, sunny spot, and we're actually going to be planting some in our kitchen garden today. And one of the things to think about when you are planting your tomatoes is how much sun they do get. They need at least 8 hours of sun a day. Some can get by on maybe 6, but a really good sunny area is the best place to plant your tomatoes. They also need a nice soil that has been amended with compost and is a nice, rich, deep soil with good drainage. Now, we've been putting compost in here for several years, and so we've got a nice soil built up. But something else that you can do is actually mound the soil. Now, we've mounded this up. It's about 4 to 6 inches tall and about 20 inches across. And what this will do is just help with the drainage so that the tomatoes aren't sitting in water. Now, as you're out looking for your tomatoes, what you'll want to look for are some good healthy plants with a sturdy stem, but not woody. We've got one here that actually has kind of a woody stem already. This has been in the pot a little too long. Also, if you knock them out of the pot, this is a good indicator. They need to have nice, healthy roots, but as you can see on this plant, they've actually started circling quite a bit, and this has been root bound in here for quite a while. Now, if you look at these on the other hand, they have a nice root system developed and they're healthy, but they haven't just started circling the pot yet. So that is a good thing to look for. Also, you want some nice healthy green leaves, free of any pests or diseases that you might notice to be present. Now, we're going to plant these in our ground bed, and traditionally you would want to amend your soil with some fertilizer. Now, tomatoes like a lot of phosphorus and potassium and less nitrogen. If you have soil really rich in nitrogen, what's going to happen is you'll get a lot of tomato plant and no blooms. Now, if you don't take a soil test and you want to know what to put in, you can actually amend your soil with a little bit of 10-20-10, about 1 to 2 pounds per 100 square feet. That actually works out to about 2 teaspoons per 1 square foot of area. So if you have one plant in that square foot of area, you want about 2 teaspoons of 10-20-10 in that area. However, this is where a soil test comes in handy. We always stress taking a soil test, and here's why. We had a soil test taken on this bed, and we have plenty of phosphorus and plenty of potassium. So we don't need to add any more of those 2 nutrients because they're pretty much immobile in the soil. And once they're present at a sufficient level, we don't need to add those 2 nutrients. Now, our nitrogen in this bed is also sufficient to get our tomatoes started. And later in the season, we may want to add a little bit, but right now we don't need to add anything. So we didn't work any nutrients into this soil ahead of time because our soil's pretty much good to go for our tomatoes. Now, I've got my bed raised here, and you want to plant them about 2 feet apart in the row. Now, this will vary depending on your type of tomato. If you have large indeterminate tomatoes, then you're going to want to plant them further apart. However, if you have a determinate size of tomato that will reach just a certain size and then quit growing, the smaller bush types, you could plant them closer together. Now, what I want to do is plant my tomato about halfway up the stem. Now, the reason that you do this is so It gives it a little bit more support. You can see it's a little loose here. And also, this will actually root all along the stem, and that will help with the support of the tomato in the wind that we have here. So I'm going to go ahead and plant this about halfway up the stem. Remove any leaves that might be below the soil because those will rot anyway, and so you want to remove those. And then I'm going to fill my hole in about halfway. Just gently press the soil down, not too much. And then I want to come in and I want to water that in. Now be careful not to get water on the leaves, and that'll help cut down on any diseases that might attack your tomatoes that would be transmitted in the soil. Now I'm going to go ahead and finish filling in my hole, and I'm going to water that again, let that soak in. And then what I'm going to do is actually give it a little bit of boost right here at the beginning with a starter solution. Now there are a lot of tomato fertilizers on the market, and a lot of them have a recipe for a starter solution. And you can just make that up and put about a cup per plant on your tomato when you plant them. That will just give them a little extra boost right here at the beginning. And I'm ready to go there. Now, you may have a tomato that either you bought it early because it was the exact tomatoes you wanted, but you didn't have time to get it out yet, and it's gotten kind of leggy. Or maybe the only tomatoes that you can find to buy are these leggy ones that are really pretty tall. Now what you can do there is actually dig your hole about 3 to 4 inches deep and dig a trench that's about 3 inches deep along the side here. And then what we're going to do is, again, we're going to take those lower leaves off of our tomato, and we're going to take our tomato out of the pot here, spread any of the roots, and we're going to set that in a trench kind of at an angle here. Need to get it just a little bit deeper here. And then we'll lay that stem along there, start filling that in again, and kind of water that in as you go. Let that soak in, and then fill in all along where that stem is. Now what this will do is give that plant some extra support, and it'll actually root all along that stem and will grow up this way. Now there's one other thing that we need to think about, and that is a means of support for these tomatoes. Especially if you have indeterminate type tomatoes that keep growing, they'll need either staked or cages. And this is a really good time to go ahead and put your cage or your stake in, especially if you use the trench method, because you want to get that cage or stake in before you forget where that stem is and come out and drive the stake right through it and cut it off. Now one other thing that you'll want to do here is to protect your young plants from cutworms. And this is real simple to do. Just take a small round thing. You can use, this is just a little Dixie cup. You could use a toilet paper roll or something like that. Cut a slit in the side and then just gently place that around the plant. You'll just need to leave that in place for 2 to 3 weeks until that plant gets large enough that a cutworm can't cut it off. And then you want to be sure to remove that, because if you leave that on there as the plant gets larger, it'll interfere with the stem growth. But just in the first 2 to 3 weeks, leave that little collar on there and that'll help.
We hope you've enjoyed this classic from the Oklahoma Gardening Vault. Remember, even though these tips and techniques are timeless, there's always something new to learn in the world of gardening. By subscribing to both Oklahoma Gardening and OK Gardening Classics, you'll have access to a wealth of gardening knowledge, both classic and contemporary.